You know, a volcano in mid-eruption is firing in spectacular show put on by Mother Earth. Today, about 500 potentially explosive mountains are quietly just sort of ticking away, nature's time bombs. Now, if they all blew together, they could wipe out the world. Fortunately, most of them are content to just sleep away the centuries. But volcanoes like Pelee, Vesuvius, and Etna, they'll never rest, it seems, until they've rid their slopes once and for all of the human race. Many scientists believe that millions of years ago, volcanoes poured out nutrients that made life possible on Earth. Now, the soil around Mount Etna in Sicily is so fertile that it produces the best crops on the island. But what the volcano gives, she also takes away. Now, in the past 200 major eruptions, Mount Etna's lava has ruined countless vineyards, destroyed many villages and towns, and tens of thousands of human lives.
Etna erupted in 1928. The people of Mescali prayed for a miracle to save their town. But the lava continued on its evil path. Battle of Monte Cassino, Italy, in March 1944. Believing this ancient monastery in the mountains was being used by the Germans to direct artillery fire, the Allies bombarded it. As they did so, an explosion occurred 70 miles to the south near Naples that made the sounds of war meager by comparison. Vesuvius. As if to demonstrate her mighty power, she sent a river of lava 200 yards wide, hurtling down towards San Sebastiano. It was a unique experience for the GIs, something new to write home about. But for the 2,500 inhabitants of San Sebastiano who had been evacuated to Naples, this, after fascism, war, and hunger, well, it was the saddest time of all. Since 1944, Vesuvius hasn't made a sound. On her slopes, the vines grow better than before, and San Sebastiano has been rebuilt. Foolishly, perhaps, on the very same spot as before. In the past, Vesuvius has come to life roughly every 25 years. The next eruption is almost a decade overdue, so this town could be living on borrowed time. But these Italians will stay, for this is home, the only one they have. And living in the shadow of the world's most explosive volcano is less worrying than the problem of poverty and where the next meal will come from. Anyhow, they know that Vesuvius never erupts without warning. When molten rock forces its way up towards the crater, the earth shakes. Now, almost 2,000 years ago, this was not understood by the people of Pompeii. When Pompeii was a beautiful, thriving city, its 20,000 inhabitants believed the mountain to be extinct. The crater was completely overgrown, and no record of an eruption existed. So, oblivious to the danger, they went about their daily lives. The tremors grew worse, and Vesuvius began to shower them with ash. But many still refused to believe that they were in peril. Within 2 days, Pompeii had completely disappeared under a blanket of volcanic ash, and 2,000 people died. For centuries, Pompeii lay buried and forgotten. When archaeologists began excavating in 1860, they found many grotesque impressions of the bodies that had been entombed. They filled these almost perfect molds with plaster. Today, those human fossils are a grim reminder never to ignore the warnings of Vesuvius.
Knows exactly why volcanoes erupt, but some scientists believe that when water manages to get into an underground reservoir of hot molten rock, it creates a buildup of gas and steam. Then pressure eventually forces the liquid rock up through fissures toward the surface of the earth. Now, if a volcano has a clearable crater that's already there, that's fine. The lava flows. But if the crater is firmly plugged with rock and old lava, the new lava must find another way out.
At 2 a.m. on January the 23rd, 1973, the tiny island of Heimaey in Iceland had its first eruption in 5,000 years. Bad weather in the fishing grounds had forced the island's trawlers to stay in port that night. So, fortunately, they were available to take the women, children, and elderly to the mainland. Only able-bodied men were allowed to stay behind. Fissure, almost a mile long, opened up near the foot of the island's old volcano, and a continual stream of ash hurtled into the air. At first, most of it was blown away from town. Then the wind changed direction. Gloomy headlines around the world called this the new Pompeii, a comparison that was not altogether untrue. The eruption passed from one disastrous phase to the next, and red-hot lava bombs began falling on the town. Eventually, enough material had poured out of the earth to form a new volcano. As it stood on the island's first Christian shrine, they called it Kirkufell, Church Mountain. Almost everyone on Heimaey relied upon the fishing fleet or fish processing for their living, so the island's only harbor was vital to the community. On February the 19th, the crater's northern wall collapsed. A fantastic mass of lava poured out and began to creep toward the harbor mouth. In Reykjavik, Iceland's capital, the refugees who'd left on the night of the eruption received daily bulletins on the volcano's progress. This day, the nagging fear that they might never be able to return to their island was confirmed. The blow was staggering. Heimaey had been created by a great eruption 6,000 years ago. Now the same cataclysmic force was taking it away. The entrance to the port was getting narrower each day. Something had to be done. So finally, they began pumping seawater onto the lava flow in a desperate attempt to cool it before it closed the harbor forever. No one had tried this on such a scale before, and hardly anyone expected it to work. But it was their only hope. After many weeks of frantic pumping, the lava stopped. The harbor was no longer in danger. At the end of June 1973, the eruption fizzled out. It had lasted 157 days and over 1/3 of the town was gone. It was a disaster for Heimaey, no doubt about that, but some good did come out of it. harbor's smaller entrance gives better protection to the fleet. The new volcano shields the town from Arctic winds, and geothermal heat will soon be used to warm the homes of those who returned. Only one man died in Heimaey's long eruption, but far away on the tropical island Martinique in the Caribbean Sea, in 6 minutes of 1902, the second biggest loss of human life occurred in volcano history.
The story of this eruption begins in a familiar way. Now, this volcano had been silent for so many years that people believed it to be safe. But from then on, this tragic tale is quite unique. In 1665, French colonizers came to Martinique and built their principal port down there. They called it Saint-Pierre. Well, it's not so beautiful now, but before the day Havoc struck, it was attractive, full of life, and was known as the Paris of the West Indies. On April the 23rd, 1902, Mount Pelee awoke from its 51 years of slumber and boomed a mighty warning. Now, for the next 2 weeks, the rumbling continued. At times, the air around here was so thick with fine white ash and sulfur that birds and even horses just dropped dead in the streets. Many people talked of leaving, but they were reassured by a scientist's report which stated that there was no danger. And they were also told that sulfur fumes were good for the chest.
A torrent of boiling mud engulfed the sugar factory on the edge of town, killing all the workers. Then the mud ran into the sea and caused a wave to destroy the wharf. An article in the local paper, said to be by a distinguished professor, assured readers that the mud flow had relieved the pressure inside Mount Pelee. Everything, it said, would now be fine. But of course it wasn't. Off and on, for the next 48 hours, the town was assaulted by ever-increasing quantities of ash and sulfur fumes, and the earth tremors came more violently than before.
By the 8th of May, the people of Saint-Pierre were so frightened they crowded into the cathedral that was here for safekeeping. Now, during Mass, several loud explosions drowned out their hymns, and at 7:50 a.m., as the service was ending, Mount Pelee killed all of them.
It wasn't volcanic ash or lava that did the killing, but a lethal cloud of white-hot gas. Within minutes, it seared the lungs of over 30,000 people. Then it burned Saint-Pierre.
Now, if you're wondering why, when all the signs of danger were there and the town was not evacuated, the answer is simply politics. Yeah. You see, an important election was coming up, and realizing that an exodus would lose votes for his party, the governor assured people that they were safe. And to back up this misguided belief, he ordered troops to block all the roads out of town. I mean, it's really unbelievable. But later, the governor, Louis Moutet, paid the price. He, too, died with the voters that day in Saint-Pierre.
This is all that's left of the town's little theater. It's hard to believe a man could have stayed alive near here in the middle of the Holocaust, but one did. The only survivor. You see, next to this theater was a prison, and he was incarcerated there for killing someone in a fight. What miracle saved him has never really been explained. But sure enough, Augustus C. Paris, gasping for air and badly burned, lived on while others died. After rescuers found him in this cell, C. Paris was pardoned and set free. Volcanology became an important branch of science after Saint-Pierre, and today active volcanoes near populated areas are closely watched. But volcanoes like Etna are dangerous and difficult things to study, and as different from each other as the men who probe their secrets. Today, after several decades of study, we are still not able to say exactly when these mountains will erupt, nor how violently.
But since that day, over 75 years ago in Martinique, much has been learned, and it is hoped that the behavior of many of the world's most dangerous peaks will be understood by, the year 2000. The barriers will have been built on their slopes capable of diverting lava from people and property, and mountains like Etna will be harnessed to provide power and energy. That volcano alone is believed to be able to provide enough electricity to run the whole of Western Europe for thousands of years. So someday, countries forced to build expensive atomic power stations will look with envy on those fortunate enough to own a great volcano.